You were always described as wise beyond your years. You didn't cry much. You didn't ask for much. You didn't need much. At least that's how it looked from the outside. You learned early how to read a room, the way sailors read the weather, subtle shifts in tone, unspoken tension, the quiet warning signs that told you when to stay small, when to step in, when to disappear. While other children were learning how to play, you were learning how to manage emotional gravity, how to stabilize adults, how to hold things together. You became the mature one, and for a long time that role saved you. It kept chaos predictable. It kept love conditional but available. It kept you safe. But here's the paradox no one warned you about. The same maturity that protected you as a child now quietly sabotages your ability to rest, receive, and be fully alive as an adult. Because maturity, when forced too early, is not wisdom, it's compression. It's a child folding their needs into a shape that fits other people's discomfort. You grew up praised for being strong, but strength came at a cost. You don't know how to be messy. You don't know how to need without guilt. You don't know how to let someone take care of you without feeling weak, indebted, or exposed. You are functional, capable, reliable, and deeply, privately exhausted. This is the hidden psychology of the mature child. You learned responsibility before you learned safety, and the very trait that made you admirable is the one that keeps you lonely. In psychology, there is a name for what happened to you. Parentification. Parentification occurs when a child is placed emotionally or practically into the role of the caregiver. Sometimes this is overt, managing siblings, handling finances, becoming the adult in the household. But more often it's subtle. You became the emotional regulator, the listener, the peacemaker, the one who understood. Your nervous system adapted by becoming hypervigilant, constantly scanning for threats, moods, instability. This wasn't anxiety. It was intelligence under pressure. Your brain learned that safety depended on anticipation neuroscientifically. This reshapes the default mode network, the system responsible for self-referential thought. Instead of what do I feel, it learned what do they need. Your internal world became externally oriented. Over time, this creates a form of avoidant attachment, not because you don't want connection, but because connection historically meant responsibility, emotional labor, and the risk of collapse. Intimacy wasn't soothing, it was work. Think of your psyche like a house, built during a storm. You didn't install windows for joy. You reinforced the walls. You didn't learn how to rest. You learned how to endure. This is why you often feel older than your peers, not in wisdom, but in wear. Your nervous system skipped childhood and went straight into survival management, and survival rewires everything. Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents." If you were the mature child, you carried more than your own weight. You carried silence. You carried unspoken grief. You carried responsibility for moods you didn't create, and in doing so, you paid an invisible price. You sacrificed authenticity for belonging. You learned that being loved meant being useful, being calm, being easy. So you became emotionally self-sufficient, not because you were strong, but because needing felt dangerous. The grief of the mature child is not loud, it's quiet. It shows up as an inability to relax without guilt, as discomfort when someone offers help, as a constant internal pressure to be productive, composed, in control. Even joy feels suspicious, like something you haven't earned. You fear rest because rest feels like abandonment of duty. You fear vulnerability because vulnerability once meant chaos. You fear being seen because being seen used to mean being needed. Simple moments become complex. Celebrations carry an undertone of responsibility. Relationships feel asymmetrical. Stillness feels wrong. This is not a flaw, it is a legacy of being too young to carry what you carried, and doing it anyway. This childhood adaptation doesn't disappear, it evolves. You might notice it in at least 6 ways. In relationships, you attract people who need guidance, fixing, emotional stability. You become the anchor and slowly resent that no one anchors you. In boundaries, you struggle to say no, not because you don't know how, but because saying no triggers guilt tied to early survival. In work, you become indispensable, and then quietly burn out, confused why success feels empty. In rest, you feel restless when nothing is required of you. Silence activates discomfort instead of peace. In emotions, you intellectualize feelings instead of feeling them. You analyze pain instead of expressing it. In identity, you don't know who you are without responsibility, without usefulness. You feel absent. These are not personality traits, they are coping strategies. The first step of healing is not fixing them but witnessing them, naming the pattern without shame, without minimizing, without gaslighting yourself into thinking it wasn't that bad. It was that heavy, and you carried it. Healing for the mature child does not mean becoming immature, it means becoming complete. It begins with inner child reparenting, learning to offer yourself what was never modeled. Softness without utility, care without performance, rest without justification. It involves shadow work, meeting the parts of you that are angry, needy, tired, and letting them exist without correction. It means choosing softness where you once chose control. This is slow work. Unlearning survival always is. But remember this. You were never meant to be strong all the time. You were meant to be held sometimes. The philosopher Simone Weil wrote, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." Give that attention to yourself, not to fix, not to optimize, but to allow, because the goal of healing is not to erase your maturity, it's to let it rest. You are not broken, you are burdened, and you don't need to be fixed, only reunited with the parts of you that were postponed. If this spoke to you, share it with someone who was also the mature one. Subscribe not to change who you are, but to remember who you were before you had to grow up too fast. Wholeness isn't becoming someone new, it's finally coming home to yourself.